Hi everyone, I'm Ayrton, the campaigns manager at Animal Justice Project. I'm joined today by Claire, the founder and director of Animal Justice Project, Anita, the founder of the Save Movement, and Andrew, the city's campaigner for Plant-Based Treaty. So recently we've launched our 20th Undercover investigation inside C&K Meats in Suffolk, which is a pig slaughterhouse. I'm not going to go into the details because, as you can imagine, they are very upsetting. You can view them on our website or on our social media if you do want to. You can probably imagine, how horrific it was inside that place. So what we've actually done is we're using this undercover investigation to lobby the UK government. And the reason for that is because we wanted to highlight the public funding of slaughterhouses here in the UK. So in the past 12 months, there's been 2 relief packages given to abattoir owners. So the reason for those packages are for the creation of new and mobile abattoirs, but also to increase their efficiency, which basically makes them more profitable and means that less slaughterhouses should, in theory, not close down any further, because we've seen a lot of slaughterhouses close down in the last 10 years in the UK, especially much of the smaller abattoirs. So today we're going to be finding out all about the SAFE movement, the plant-based treaty, the power of undercover investigations, and how we can work together to create a world free from slaughterhouses. So firstly, I'd like to come to you, Anita. So the SAFE movement has been a global success for many years. But it would be fantastic to hear about how you came up with the concept for the SAFE movement, why you created it, and also how it was actually first received by both activists and the abattoir owners as well.
Thanks, Ayrton. Yes, a dog, Mr. Bean, put me in touch with pig slaughter trucks in our neighborhood and changed everything for the better. I moved near a downtown slaughterhouse in Toronto in 2006 and did nothing until I adopted Mr. Bean 4 years later. Mr. Bean was a Beagle Whippet dog. He was very sure of himself. He always marched in front. And during our morning walks, we'd see pigs looking out of transport trucks in rush hour traffic that I hadn't noticed before. So it was a life-changing experience to see the sad and scared pigs in the transport trucks. The first time I walked up close to a truck, I saw a worried pig look up at me pleading for help. I promised the pig 3 vigils a week every week. I wanted the whole community to pay attention and have love, empathy, and pity for these sweet, innocent creatures. Toronto Pig Safe started holding 3 vigils a week in 2011 until so-called quality meat packers went bankrupt in 2014. Our approach was to bear witness as a community, people of all ages, children, grandmothers coming together to bear witness. Tolstoy, one of my inspirations, defined bearing witness as a difficult moral choice you face. You can look away and flee from suffering creatures, or you can do the right thing and come close to animals that are suffering as close as you can and try to help them. So our goal when we first started was to hold vigils at every slaughterhouse around the world. Right now we have about 300 groups, so there are millions of slaughterhouses. So we don't see ourselves as a big success. It's a work in progress. There are groups in 36 countries. What is important about the animal vigils and bearing witness is it puts animals at the center. So it's an animal standpoint. And the primary focus is on the animals. And so I think it has been well received by activists because people are very moved by animals. People love animals. And so, and in terms of how it's been received by slaughterhouse owners, managers, and workers is by and large, in a way that we are able to, hold these vigils in a peaceful way because our approach is love-based. So we combined bearing witness with love-based community organizing. A vigil is not a protest. We don't want people to be angry. but rather to be love-based, to return love for hate. We think this approach attracts more people and invites the broader public to bear witness. I just wanted to say how powerful the bearing witness is in terms of how all your senses are engaged: touch, smell, sights, and sounds. And it's worse than you can imagine on all those fronts. And I wanted to quote Dario Fo. He's an Italian Nobel laureate. In his autobiography, 7 Years, he said, "That is what happens to animals when they are locked up. Animals in captivity, forced to live in a cage. That's what makes them smell like that. Normally, freedom has no stench. When they are at liberty in the forest, they certainly do not smell that way. They smell that way the way they should, just enough to make themselves recognized by their kind and feared by their prey." So I wanted to quote that because the smells when you're at the transport trucks or at the slaughterhouse are unbearable. And that's why it's important for all of us to be there and bear witness to the truth and intervene to stop this madness.
Yeah, I mean, it's very powerful. I think I've attended like safe vigils for many years, and I think you're exactly right in terms of like all of the senses. When you're there, you get to see what's happening, you get to smell what's happening, and hearing those animals as well. I think the safe movement has been brilliant in bringing activists closer to the animals, because obviously we know many people are not actually going onto farms and seeing the conditions of pig farms or chicken farms. But if we get to connect with those animals in their final moments, I think it allows activists to see exactly what we're fighting for as well.
It's really important, isn't it? Because it was only last week that I took some activists on a pig farm, and they'd never been on one before. And it'll be out actually soon on like YouTube or whatever. But it was just really interesting. Like, I mean, one of them said it changed their life, and this is somebody who's been doing activism for years. But seeing the pigs close up, it's just something else, isn't it? And as you said, it's the senses, it's the smell, the sounds, it's everything. So super important work, I think.
Yeah, that connection, I think all it can possibly do is like drive us to fight harder actually for the animals as well, like seeing them in front of us. Which is why, vigils outside of slaughterhouses are so important. I know, Anita, you just said like, in terms of the number of slaughterhouses and the number of vigils that take place, it's not, a complete success just yet. But I do think that's a huge success of what you've managed to create so far. And like, in 3 dozen countries, that's just, it's really brilliant. In terms of the impacts of the safe movement, do you know, has there been any impact? Can you think of any stories like in terms of like for workers outside, for workers at slaughterhouses? Like, do you know of any workers that have managed to like speak with activists and like change the industry that they work on? Or has the vigils like had an impact on specific abattoirs or like the meat industry as a whole?
I think the first thing that the animal vigils, pig, cow, chicken vigils have done is they've politicized the transport trucks and the slaughterhouses. People, including activists, often are not aware that there are transport trucks on the highways or a slaughterhouse in their community. Activists don't even know. So that I think that was the first thing. It's just like we're shining light on these transport trucks, and then people can recognize them. So that's the first thing. It sort of raises awareness. So awareness is the first step. The next step is taking action. So a lot of people, as you've mentioned, Claire, when they see these animals firsthand, it's life transforming. It was an epiphany for me because I was already a vegan and activist before I started the vigils with local activists in Toronto. It just makes it an absolute priority in your life to fight for animal rights and animal justice and animal freedom. So that's it's sort of like there's nothing as powerful as observing firsthand. A movie made me go vegan and become an activist, but when I bore witness up front in person, it made me accountable, and it occupies my mind. So when you see something firsthand, it becomes a part of your thinking. What you think about. When it's easy to forget these animals. So like if you don't see them firsthand, you may watch a movie and it might change you, but when you see them firsthand, it makes you highly accountable. With respect to workers, there have been a few workers that have, talked to us and have no longer work at slaughterhouses and are active in the movement. Some of them have started like sanctuaries. So that's inspiring, but it's a small number. I think it's the system that needs to change. There'll be a few agents, a few individuals that will do the right thing, but a lot of people that are workers are trapped in the system. They don't want to do it. They might be new immigrants. They might be, the history of slaughterhouse workers has always been people sort of at the margins of society, people that are exploited by sort of the dominant class. And so, yes, there are individuals that have been fortunate enough to leave that system, but what we really need to do is change the system, change subsidies, change what we finance. So that's my experience. Andrew, I know you've had experience talking to workers and trying to persuade them. And I think it's necessary for us to do. But I think the most important thing is to change the system.
Yeah, I would like to add, like, one of the most impactful things about doing vigils is, like Anita said, shining the spotlight on the slaughterhouse. Because the only reason why these industries thrive is because it's secrecy, it's like hidden. So when we rock up with 10, 20, 30 people, we have placards, we're like drawing attention to the slaughterhouse, and people are driving past and they're like, oh, this is a pig slaughterhouse. I never knew there was a slaughterhouse there. So then we've just like planted a seed with that person, and you never know where that might lead. They might go vegan. Also, another powerful weapon we have when we do vigils is the camera, because they do not want the footage of individual pigs, cows, sheep, chickens to be shared to the masses. That's like their number one fear. And you don't realize how much impact you'll actually have in your family or friends when you share these individual stories. Like, for example, I'd filmed this one pig in Manchester, and she was like this really beautiful, calm pig, and all these other pigs around her were like really stressed and kind of like, anxious, and she was just like really focused on me. And I was talking to her calmly and saying, how lovely she is, how beautiful she is, and I'm sorry this is happening to you. And I recorded this and I posted it to my Facebook wall, and it got like maybe like 10,000 views, which was, pretty good. But I had a comment from a woman in New Zealand who was seeing it. It impacted her so much that she went vegan on the spot. And now she's made like 5-6 people in her life vegan. So that's just one video, that's just one time. And we've had thousands of activists for the animal safe movement like share videos, and you don't know what impact you're actually having. And not everyone comments either. So I think it's like really transformative.
Yeah, I think the secrecy side is a really important point there. Like especially here in the UK, can't speak for other countries, but a lot of our, the really large slaughterhouses are, just at the edge of like an industrial estate, for example. The slaughterhouse I used to go to for about 5-6 years was just at the end of an industrial estate, and pretty much the only people that knew it was there were the next door companies. And again, they were, animal product companies, so it didn't impact them as much as it would the general public. I think with the secrecy as well, I think undercover investigations are incredibly important to help expose that too. As I mentioned earlier, the pig slaughterhouse that we've just released is our 20th undercover investigation since 2019. With exposure all areas of the industry. There's many more to still expose, but we've tried to take it kind of as broad as possible to, again, reach as many people as possible as well through national media and through social media. So undercover investigations, they're incredibly powerful tool. Claire, it'd be great if you could talk about the importance of undercover investigations and also how they've exposed the smokescreen created, by welfare assurances like RSPCA Assured, or even different elements as well, like how CCTV is mandatory as well inside slaughterhouses.
Yeah, I mean, I think undercover investigations, I mean, obviously the main thing is media coverage. You can sort of, you can do some activism and it will reach, the people within the sort of vicinity. So if you're doing street outreach or whatever, but obviously media is so powerful. You're going to be reaching tens of thousands of people rather than, the sort of the handful that are seeing whatever's happening, like an event on the streets or what have you. So I think undercover investigations are imperative for spreading the message to people that wouldn't go to an animal rights protest. Just your average person, the average person who eats meat, consumes dairy. It's getting the images, obviously stating the obvious, getting the images, for example, from within slaughterhouses out there. Because as we all know that, when you're going through a supermarket, they're not going to show you the images on the packets of meat or on the cartons of milk. So I think that's pretty obvious. But I think the other importance of undercover investigations is giving us fuel as a movement. So with the images, and you can build campaigns from the images and the video footage. So there's so much that you can do. You can take that material, and that's something that Animal Justice Project does try to do. Not just have the media expose, but also then, use that footage again and again to build a campaign and really try to make a difference, whether that's using it to lobby MPs or to do consumer campaigns or corporate pressure campaigns. So I think, and it's something that we are definitely trying to do more of. So we've got somebody on the team who's going to be reviewing all of our undercover investigation footage, because we have so much of it. And they're going to be looking at it and, which footage has never seen the light of day, and trying to use it again. So really trying to get the most out of the undercover investigations, which is obviously important as well, particularly if you've had like a worker in a slaughterhouse. For the worker or for the person installing cameras in a duck shed, they want to know, like the field team wants to know, and the investigators want to know that their footage is going to be used as much as it possibly can. And obviously, I think Ayrton touched on this smoke screen that we're talking about in the Scammed campaign. One running theme that we have noticed, particularly in the abattoirs, is the fact that these legislation breaches, guideline breaches are just standard. They're just routine. Every slaughterhouse we film in, whether it's the 24 hours or 2 weeks, it's all, the abuse happens under the CCTV. It happens in the face of the official veterinarians, which is the government appointed Food Standards Agency vets. It's done in front of the animal welfare officers. It's done even in front of auditors as well, we've seen. And the reporting of non-compliances is very low. So it's all, basically, we're seeing this routine kind of, legislative breach within slaughterhouses. And yet the Food Standards Agency or the UK government is saying how successful they are in stopping breaches and how low, what a low number of non-compliances they're finding. So I think it was like less than 1% of non-compliances reported within abattoirs are actually even referred to for investigation. But then there's so few non-compliances being reported because the official veterinarian isn't reporting it. The CCTV isn't being watched. So the whole thing is, I think certainly for the media coverage, I think the media, as you guys will know, the media like to focus on abuse and, the law breaking within abattoirs. But I think we do try to, in our campaigns and in our materials and in our narrative, show that, that the law breaking, the abuse, the suffering, the pain is all just standard, and it is intrinsic within the animal slaughter industry. So yeah, I mean, I think 20 investigations is phenomenal. We're looking forward to, we've already banked up, and we've got some very, very powerful footage that we're due to release at the end of this year and the beginning of next. And I think they are just an essential tool for animal rights NGOs. I think it's they're everything, really. I mean, not everything, but they're what we base a lot of our work on. Yeah, they're super important for us, and I think for the movement as a whole. And another example of some footage that came out was obviously Joey Carlstrong's gas thing, which had never been shown before in the UK, had it? And this is something I met up with my parents actually a couple of weeks ago. And I see them probably once a year, to be honest. But I met up with them, and I asked my dad how he thought pigs were killed, and he thought that they had a gun to their heads. They just, boof, and then they're out cold. And when I told him they're in gas chambers, him and my mum were just like absolutely they were like, what? As if I was, making it up or something. But I think it's really important, and this is something that I think, it's finding those things that are really emotive. And I think gas chambers, what a powerful tool that is, to have footage of pigs in a gas chamber. And it's something that we certainly are going to be looking into, really highlighting more, because the public just don't know. They have no idea. And I think it's about getting that footage, that essential footage, and making it go the distance, getting those nationwide banner drops, looking at Farm Transparency Project in Australia, the incredible work that they did to raise awareness on gas chambers. Because this is it. It's so terrible. It's about finding ways to show the public and not make them turn away and, change things. Because I'm still pretty sure that, a lot of people that eat meat, if they saw pigs in a gas chamber, maybe it's quite naive, I'm pretty sure a lot of them would give up pork. I don't know. I mean, it's just so horrific. So
there's a company called Butina based in Denmark that makes 90% of the gas chambers in the world. When we started Toronto Pig Safe, we got footage of the pigs being electrically prodded into the gas chamber. So if you go to Toronto Pig Safe YouTube and go all the way back to 2011, we have footage because the slaughterhouse wasn't, aware that we would start a group, and there were open windows to the pen area and the kill floor with a gas chamber. So please go to that footage. And I showed Sue Coe, the famous animal rights artist, and she said the way the pigs were bobbing, they were so stressed because they were like electrically prodded. They weren't even like pigs. They were like just like they and there was this narrow chamber that had that was enclosed, so they couldn't escape. And they were men standing along this channel and electrically prodding them 2 to 3 at a time into a compartment that would then be lowered. It was like a gondola and an elevator. It would be lowered because carbon dioxide is heavier than air. And then they would suffocate. And then when they came out, they weren't dead because they didn't want them to die. They wanted the heart to keep on pumping the blood. So when they slit they shackled them on one leg upside down, and then they slit their throat. And sometimes the pigs would wake up, even by the time they went to the scalding tank. So we have footage of a lot of that from 2011. When we said it, I guess, we were ignored because people thought it was too fantastic. But I'm glad it's now being a major issue. And we could have ran with that more, but when we said it, people were just they dismissed us.
Yeah. It's almost so too horrible to be true, I think a lot of people would think. But I think this is something, again, about sort of using the footage. And it's something that, because we've obviously just released footage within C&K Meats, which was pigs being goaded into the gas chamber. We didn't actually get the gassing, but Joey has the gassing. You guys have the gassing. Farm Transparency Project have the gassing. And there's been others as well, I think France and so on for. It's about using that footage. And I think, it's about sort of working with other groups. And I would hope that groups would want to share their footage. And I think they all do. But it's trying to find ways of getting that footage. So, okay, we don't all have gassing, but there is gassing footage out there. Right. So
there's a lot more gassing than people think. So before it became a big issue, we got a list of all the clients for Butina. It's not publicly available, but when we were looking at it, because nobody was really challenging them at that time, we got a list. So we can share that with you. So by country, it would list all their clients by city and by slaughterhouse. So it's actually it is a very common way to kill pigs. It's probably the most common way in a lot of countries.
in the UK.
For big slaughterhouse, like, the biggest slaughterhouse in the world, like Smithfield, they have like 3 gas chambers side by side, killing 30,000 pigs a day. So a lot of these slaughterhouses can kill like 1,000 pigs on one gas chamber per hour. So they're just like prodding them very quickly into the. So there is a list of all the countries that are clients, from China to Brazil, Canada, UK, US, all over the world, sold by a company called Butina in Denmark.
We almost need a global campaign on pig gassing, don't we, really, where all the groups come together and try and tackle this issue, because I just think it's one of the strongest things. Animal Justice Project, in our investigations, we try to get things that are not seen before. Like we were the group that first filmed the killing of the bull calves that are unwanted by the dairy industry, and that was very shocking to a lot of people. But it's so undercover investigations, super important, but I think also it's using that footage as well. So it's not just getting the footage, it's using it. And the other thing I just wanted to say is quickly about the media is I've been told so many times that the media won't cover, by journalists actually, some of them, you won't get many journalists to pick up this slaughter, it's too horrific. But they do actually, and we found that slaughter investigations are probably the most picked up by the media, our end. And also on social media, they're the most shared, and we raise the most funds as well through slaughterhouse investigations. So people do watch it, and they do. It's actually not because as I thought, there's no way they'd be showing it on media, and we've had national media on slaughterhouses, so it will get shown.
Yeah, I think as you said, like our slaughterhouse investigations are always most widely spread across social media, especially. But obviously, with this latest release, we were lucky enough, to get 4 national papers that actually covered the story as well. Which hopefully is reaching millions of consumers.
Yeah.
And that is bringing that slaughterhouse footage, because they did use our video footage as well in those articles. So that's bringing that footage directly to those consumers. And hopefully, next time we go to the supermarket, they will second guess the products that they are buying them. And hopefully, they're not going to be eating pigs anymore, and hopefully no more animals as well.
I mean, we had in the Mail Online with the most recent investigation, we had a huge article with multiple photos and the video footage. But even though we didn't get gassing, we spoke about it, and the pigs have been goaded into the gas chambers. And sometimes it only takes that pigs are gassed in CO2. Sometimes people don't even need to see the imagery of that itself.
Yeah. And I think with the point again about secrecy, undercover investigations bring those secrets into the light. They get to show, we get to show consumers exactly where their bacon and sausages are coming from. And again, that links through back to what we were saying about the vigils as well. The secrecy of the transportation and the slaughter at the end as well. It's all so interconnected, isn't it? But it's also important to show every single step that those animals have to go through. And I think the way we've used this latest investigation as well, as I mentioned earlier, that we're using it as like a political lobbying tool. We've just launched a new petition with it as well. We've had about 14,000 people already sending our letter directly to the UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. And then we've launched a secondary action as well, where we've had over 1,500 people directly write to their personal MPs about this issue of ending the public funding of slaughterhouses. So, as fantastic as it is for getting it in the media as well, it's such a great tool for us to be able to do that lobbying as well, which, as we keep saying, the systematic change is so important. But yeah, I'd quite like if we could move on to talk about the plant-based treaty, because obviously that's another like systematic tool that you guys have created and seems to be doing like fantastically well. I'm sure most people watching have heard about the plant-based treaty already, but if they haven't, Andrew, would you be able to discuss, what is the plant-based treaty, like how was it created and why was it created?
I think Anita's probably the best to answer that question. Well, the one that found.
Again, I'll just say a little bit about the origins and pass it to Andrew. But I just wanted to say what you've done with your lobbying was our missing piece with the animal safe movement. We just held vigils, we did vegan outreach, but we didn't do that next step of going to the city. So I'm very happy to hear how you have a full campaign where you have more than 10,000 people writing to the Prime Minister. Right? And what the plant-based treaty did for us was give us that missing piece to make it a full-on campaign. So it started 3 years ago. We met with Sephora Berman. She was my blockade leader in a old growth rainforest campaign in 1993 and 1997 with Greenpeace in 97. And that in British Columbia, we have 1,000-year-old trees. And she was this incredible blockade leader. So I called her, a couple of decades later, and I said, how do we put animal agriculture on the global agenda? Because she had been the Greenpeace International Energy Campaigner. She was in DiCaprio's film. She recently won $2 million for leadership, and she started a group called Stand Earth. So I made an appointment to see her, and Nicola Harris joined, and Janelle, Janice's mom, and she showed us the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. And after the call, our heads were spinning. We go, wow, this is so good. We need a plant-based treaty. It was like that simple. And so we literally copied their treaty, and it took us 3 months or 3 or 4 months. So we launched it in August of 2021 with website, branding, everything, because we just literally copied their structure and framework. So they have 3 principles, as we do now. The first one is don't make things worse, relinquish, stop the problem from getting worse. No new slaughterhouses, no new deforestation for animal agriculture, ban live exports, no new animal farms, et cetera. And then the second principle is redirect economic and political tools, such as taxes, subsidies, regulations, community education, and partnerships between governments and nonprofits. The third principle is restore, reforest, rewild the earth, promote food security through community gardens, city orchards. And our big campaign has been the cities campaign, and I'll pass it to Andrew because Andrew has done a phenomenal job in getting cities to endorse.
Thank you, Anita. So as my role as a city campaigner, I kind of focus on lobbying councillors and cities to find out if they are including food systems in their action plans, which 99% of councils don't mention food systems. So what we do, we show them actions and things they could do to address the food system. So we give them advice, motion templates, and things like that. With Edinburgh's endorsement, they've actually created a whole action plan now where they're going to try and reduce meat consumption and dairy consumption in Edinburgh by 20 to 50% by 2050. And they're going to make sure there's a vegan option in every school in Edinburgh. And they've also partnered with a company called Clamato, which is carbon labeling, and they're going to do that in Edinburgh University as well. So every kind of city and council is different because every city and council have different capabilities. So we kind of have to talk with them and see what can be done. Sometimes it's just simple things like promoting veganery and public education campaigns. Sometimes it's bigger things where they could do vegan Mondays or vegan Fridays in schools. For example, Amsterdam are now going to do vegan Fridays in all public institutions. And that came about after Edinburgh endorsed, because it got such, mainstream attention that Amsterdam actually seen it, and they reached out to our team, and now they've endorsed and they're doing vegan Fridays, and now other cities around Europe are seeing this, and they want to, speak to us and see what they can do. So it has such a powerful ripple effect.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, it's so powerful to actually get an entire city to sign up to something like the plant-based treaty. I mean, that's going to send so many messages, so many positive messages, and also those messages as well to animal agricultural industries as well, that this is where the future is going, and people are starting to listen as well.
Can I just ask, actually, why do you think, Andrew, Edinburgh was so? Because obviously Edinburgh seems to have gone all in. What is it that makes Edinburgh different? Was there some vegan councillors or something, or?
So we had two green councillors, Ben and I can't remember the guy's other name. Anita, do you remember?
Steve Burgess?
Yes. And they were kind of like our plant-based treaty champions, and they were just like, because obviously they knew every strategy and how to get it on the agenda. And, initially it was just like a symbolic thing that they endorsed the plant-based treaty, they acknowledged food systems, but Ben managed to make it even into a bigger thing and actually create like an action plan. And that's like ever evolving now. And so every 6 months to a year, they meet up and discuss how can they actually grow this plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that they did a impact assessment of the entire treaty's 3 principles and 40 detailed proposals. So when Ben Parker, Steve Burgess, when they first got email actions, just like you do, the email actions to the Prime Minister, we have email actions that local constituents can send to all their councillors. So if you go to our website, Plant-Based Treaty, you can send an email action. So they got one of these. We didn't have an active campaign there. It was just like local people that, responded to the website appeal and say they sent the letter. And one of the Green councillors proposed to endorse the treaty. And the council said, no, do a full impact assessment of the entire treaty. So that was the best decision ever. It took them more than half a year to do that. And then that's what they passed. They have ideas for, community education, food waste, plant-based menu change, spreading the idea to other sister cities. So they actually had all these proposals that after they did the impact assessment, and as Andrew mentioned, they then passed a plan of action, and then they write a regular report on that. So now, for example, one of our campaigners in the UK, our communications director, Nicola, in Bournemouth, she's asking their council to not endorse the treaty, but first to do an impact assessment. Because from our point of view, that's how you get a more comprehensive look at what the treaty is calling for. Because there's so many specific proposals like, include a plant-based strategy in your climate action plan, finance plant-based policies. There's just so many. And currently we're working on a document that looks at the plant-based treaty in action. So like when we have the 40 detailed proposals, we show examples of what that means. What does community education mean? But then we give examples like New York City has eat a whole lot more plants, promoting whole food. Manchester had a campaign called Eat Less Meat. And just like we give examples of the billboards to inspire other cities. I think that's the key. Like what you do.
That's really good, because I think giving councils and also the public information on what exactly does it mean, plant-based treaty, because you hear plant-based treaty, but it's like sometimes it's difficult to envisage what the councils are actually doing. So that's really good you're doing that, actually. And it makes it more tangible. So councils can look at it and be like, okay, we can do this. We can't do that. We might do it in 2 years' time, to give them something a bit concrete to work towards.
Yeah, and we drew on this document in the US called a Toolkit for Cities. So there was a Center for Environmental Law that did a study of dozens of cities that have plant-based measures. And so then they categorized them. And so we incorporated that into our new document called 40 extended proposals for the plant-based treaty. And I'll give you an example of like the creative actions. Like in a number of US cities like Baltimore, Washington, DC, they passed like a plant-based week or a plant-based month. Sometimes it was around their Veg Fest. And so the mayor would do a proclamation, and it would be a city NGO partnership. So it would be some, veg group and the city that pass a proclamation, and then restaurants would sign up to have more plant-based options. One of the cities did it in January for Veganuary. Another did it in August during their Veg Fest. Like, you see, that was a creative thing that I wouldn't even be able to propose. But when you review it, you go, wow, there's all these creative measures. So that's what this document will have. It will be full of examples of what you can do.
Amazing. That's exciting.
Yeah, it sounds brilliant. I think as well, something mentioned earlier was with Edinburgh, that it was actually somebody who had sent that letter through to the councillors that kind of got that ball rolling, which just goes to show that actually both as organisations and individuals, how powerful it can be to do that lobbying to councillors, to MPs, the UK Parliament, Senate, etc. And we can actually get, successes from that as well. Something I was reading earlier as well was all about your plant-based zones. So it'll be interesting to find out a little bit more about those. So you've got like your plant-based zones within like schools and hospitals. So do you like contact those directly, or would those be schools and hospitals within cities that have endorsed the plant-based treaty?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're just beginning to develop playbooks of best practices. So our first campaign that we launched is called the 100 Cafes campaign, where we ask local activists, regardless of endorsing the treaty, just to go to 100 cafes and try to up their game by, including more plant-based, by putting stickers saying we offer plant-based milks, or to get them to offer plant-based milk by default, or just so we have like a lot of 12 asks to make these cafes more. And then it's a long-term process, it's a long game. So you go back and keep on going back and seeing like if they're interested in doing this, perhaps you can go back to them in January and see if they'll be part of Veganuary, or or maybe recruit them for a veg week with the city. But it's just trying to develop a long-term relationship. So that's our first campaign. But we do have playbooks for hospitals, but we haven't launched a full-on campaign like we did in the 100 Cafes case. Because if you go to our website, we have a whole campaign for the 100. We have brochures, stickers, we have trainings. But we're still in the process of doing, a full campaign for the different institutions. But that's our goal, is to look at every institution and look at best practices, starting with the very best, which is fully plant-based, inspired by, Animal Rising and other groups that have done full-on, plant-based universities, that kind of thing. That's obviously the best practice. Then second best is plant-based or vegan by default, or veg by default, or greener by default, because you can have an uptake of 60, 80%. So in New York City public hospitals, they're doing greener by default twice, and they have an uptake of 60% with cost savings and 95% satisfaction. So it's like win, win, win. So, and then the third best practice is, maybe the positioning of the menu, how you do things on the menu, and or having a plant-based day, like meat-free Mondays, plant-powered Fridays. So like we just go through the whole list and just encourage people to do that. And so, yeah, it's regardless of whether the city has endorsed. It's just, we can do this anywhere.
Yeah.
I would love for us to be involved at some point in this by default initiative, because, can you imagine if somewhere like Costa or some of the coffees, like soya milk or oat milk was the default and people had to request that. I mean, that would be, because that's what we're aiming for, right? We're aiming for this transition to a society without slaughterhouses, and something like that would be a natural progression, that it would be by default. So have you managed to get sort of any smaller kind of cafes that aren't vegan to offer like plant milk by default? Or have you not got there yet? Is that not one of your aims?
Oh, it's definitely an aim. I don't know if we've gotten there yet, but we did invite Better Food Foundation and Greener by Default to the Edinburgh meetings we had with their staff, and they are part of the action plan now. So they're US-based groups, but they have a global dimension. So you could be in touch with Greener by Default and Better Food Foundation. So yeah, we definitely partner with them at every opportunity. And I think in the UK, Dr. Shireen Kassam's plant-based health professionals is partnering with them to try to do Greener by Default in hospitals.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. I think having those different levels as well, like obviously we would love them to go fully plant-based straight away, but even having those kind of halfway levels or by default, it kind of opens it up as well to have more change rather than going in asking for fully plant-based, which it may put off a few councils or schools or hospitals to begin with. but I think it's a great way to, get your foot in the door, and then once you've got that first step in, you can continue working with them as well. It's interesting actually, because this it's good timing, because it was just yesterday that my local city council, they've just announced that they're going to go fully plant-based, which I'm very surprised about. But yeah, so that's brilliant. I was reading the details about that, and they're going to be fully plant-based in terms of catering, and milks in offices and things like that. And it's only by a special request that someone is going to be allowed, I presume, like cow's milk, for example. So I guess that's a combination of the, by default, but also, fully plant-based for catering. So yeah, it's obviously possible.
Is that Calderdale Council?
Nottingham City Council. It just got announced. I think it was yesterday it got announced. It's hit the local media this morning. Yeah. In terms of plant-based treaty then, we was reading as well that you wanted to attach it to the UN Framework Convention for Climate Change, to be able to reduce climate change and animal agriculture. How do you think attaching plant-based treaty to that UN framework is going to help with climate change? The obvious part is that, it's plant-based, but is there anything else that you're looking into?
So the plant-based treaty has two goals, or its vision is, one, to have the plant-based treaty attached to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change in order for us to abide by the Paris Accords. That is like no warming greater than 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius, which would be catastrophic, particularly if we went over 2 degrees. 1.5 to 2, we'd be passing a lot of tipping points. So that, as Greta Thunberg says, that's catastrophic. And then the second goal is local action on the part of cities, other institutions, because we can't wait for the global agreement. We can do a lot right now. So why do we need a global agreement? Because it's a global issue. We can't, no one city, one country can solve this. We need the whole world to transition to a plant-based food system so that we can live within our planetary boundaries. So climate is just one. So the food sector is responsible for a third of greenhouse gas emissions. It's up from what the FAO was saying, which was 14%. That's way too low. There's a consensus now that it's a third of greenhouse gas emissions. It is also the main cause of a number of other planetary boundary breaches, such as ocean acidification, biodiversity loss, land use change, nitrogen and phosphorus pollution, and so forth. So that's the reason that we're calling for, a global treaty.
Yeah, I think that comes back to the collaboration aspect as well. Obviously that will be on a global scale, collaboration across countries, but as you say, it is a global issue. And if one country was to go fully plant-based, we really do need those other countries to catch up, because the climate change doesn't just impact one singular country at a time, does it? It's there's far more vulnerable countries out there compared to those actually making the biggest impact on climate change. So it is something that we do need to work on together. So in terms of, we've spoken a lot so far about systematic change. I think that's a really key point throughout all of this, especially, with animal safety movement, with undercover investigations, collaborations, plant-based treaty, etc. In our campaign, as I've already mentioned, we're targeting the UK government and the public funding of slaughterhouses through those different relief packages, alongside bailouts and other government funding. We know that they're key to holding up those oppressive systems, like slaughterhouses, like farms, like the transportation of the animals as well. We're super keen to look into the what farming systems would look like without animal agriculture being involved, and more importantly, how do we actually get there? So there's different initiatives around the world. I'm sure you're familiar with them already, but here in the UK, we've got the Grow Green initiative. There's Refarmed in Europe, and obviously there's Transformation in the US as well. And more recently, we've seen that Derek Sarno announced his work with a chicken farmer here in the UK, and he's actually worked with the farmer, which is a first in the UK, to change from chicken farming to mushroom farming. So we really hope, that's going to be an example for many more farmers to transition in the future as well. So in terms of, getting to that future goal with a world, a plant-based world, but especially one that doesn't have slaughterhouses, Claire, it would be great if you could talk about how we at Animal Justice Project are working to create that world free of slaughterhouses.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like our work, we obviously kind of in 2019, it really kind of hit off Animal Justice Project, which is amazing. But I feel like we're increasingly doing a lot more self-reflection. So I feel like, back in 2019, we were doing, amazing work, but I feel like there was maybe less strategic direction in our campaigns. Whereas increasingly year on year, we're looking at longer term campaigns. So we're not sort of jumping so much. All of our campaigns, all of our work falls under a handful of campaigns. We've got expired for dairy, beef, the calf trade. We've got obviously the foul truths, chicken ducks, scams, slaughterhouses. We've got Respect All Life, which is our kind of vegan consumer campaign. So we've kind of got set campaigns. But in terms of how we're sort of working towards this sort of future free from slaughterhouses, as an NGO, we use different methods, and I feel like our methods are constantly changing as well. Again, we're sort of really we're really self-reflecting a lot more now. So we're sort of trying to use the most effective we're trying to use the strategies that are most effective. So, for example, we do pressure campaigns. So we try to, one example we did recently, a couple of years ago, was a campaign against Delamere Dairy, which is the goat milk brand in the UK. So we got one of the major retailers to drop the goat milk. They put a statement out. We had tens of thousands of people join the campaign. So we're doing sort of things like that, but also we're looking at kind of our theory of change and our longer term strategy. So we're working a lot more on like pigs and cows next year and the end of this year. And we're looking at sort of producing these strategies which are going to sort of really make a difference. Because I think sometimes you can get so bogged down with doing things. It's like trying to sit back more and actually, what is actually impacting, what's actually affecting the consumers, what's making them go plant-based, what's changing corporate policies. And increasingly, I feel like we're looking more at political lobbying. And I feel like it's going to take political lobbying, I think, is really important to help create this world about slaughterhouses. And it's something that we are looking more towards, of Scammed, for example, like, writing to the MPs and trying to get people mobilised on a local level to make change, to write to their constituents, who will then be, pressurising politicians within the Houses of Parliament with parliamentary questions or early day motions or what have you. So I feel like, as an organisation, we just use many, many different tactics. We're looking more at long-term strategies to make impacts, to make the biggest impacts. And I feel like trying to collaborate more as well with other organisations, because as Anita touched on, I feel like, if we do work together, I know it's not always easy. We're coming from different sides. Then I think we can make a bigger difference. But I think it is going to take a lot of collaboration between different organisations globally to move towards a future without slaughterhouses. And the other thing is money. One of the speakers at a conference in Manchester recently was saying about, when you compare the money that animal NGOs work on versus animal agriculture, how much money they've got, we've got our work cut out. So also it's trying to find ways of bring more money into the movement, because that's the reality of it. We need money to do more work, to recruit more staff, to do more campaigns. So yeah, we're working on fundraising as well to try to increase our income so that we can do more for animals.
Yeah, I really hope that, I might be slightly biased here being from Animal Justice Project, but I really do hope that, our supporters and the people that see our work can see that we are doing that a lot more in terms of, going after industries as a whole, going after, RSPCA assured as a welfare assurance label. Like in the last 12 months, for example, we've, exposed the UK egg industry at every single level.
It's trying to find those areas as well where people, they don't know about, like, the slaughter of the bull calves, the gassing of the pigs, mother cow separation, the forcing of pigs into farrowing crates. I mean, these are just things that are just standard, but people just don't know about. So yeah, always trying to find ways to expose the industry in different ways.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the political lobbying side is so important. And as we've seen, we only released our latest investigation 2.5 weeks ago, and we've had, a lot of people sending off those letters to the Prime Minister and to their MPs as well. So it shows that our supporters and both vegans and probably non-vegans as well, this is something that they're really passionate about, and they are interested in actually speaking to the people that are supposed to represent us within our councils, within our parliaments, etc. So, Anita or Andrew, I don't know if you have anything to add to that in terms of, if we have, creating that world free from slaughterhouses, if we do have that plant-based food system in place, kind of what does that look like in reality? Like, how are people's lives going to change?
Yeah, I like what you said about exposing, trying to raise awareness, getting that people power behind you, that awareness behind you, but then making sure that everyone's a lobbyist, all the animal rights activists and the movement consists of people that are lobbyists, getting more money into the movement, collaborating amongst ourselves in the animal movement, but also in an intersectional way, because the climate crisis, the freshwater crisis, the biodiversity crisis, all of these crises have as one of their main root causes animal agriculture. So I think, doing everything you outlined is these are the key ingredients for a long-term campaign to have a world free from slaughterhouses. I think one of the issues that we need to tackle in terms of the first part, which is like awareness, is worldviews. How do we get people to see that we are not separate from nature and other animals? We are animals. We're not superior to animals in nature. In fact, those are some of the root causes of our crises in terms of how we treat animals, the climate crisis, and so forth, the biodiversity crisis. So how do we change people's worldview? And that's where it comes to strategies like connecting with animals, because all of us on this panel, we know that, when you meet animals, they are so special. They are more than any material wealth can ever, compensate for. They are just like how we feel about other human beings. They have rights. They're individuals. And so, like, how do we, we all know that they're not commodities, that they're not things, they're not property, that they're persons, they're equal, and that there's a unity of life, and that for us to survive, we need to, have a worldview where we recognize the interconnectedness and that all life is one. So I think that's one of our challenges, is just like changing people's worldview. And I think we know how to do it, because like, what happened to us? Maybe there was a time when we didn't feel that or see it that way. What happened to us to change our worldview? And I think that's part of the challenge, is to, have people interact with animals at sanctuaries, at preserves, have better education at all levels, from junior to, high school, university. So I think that's part of it. And then the second part is just the organizing, which you touched on, which is, the lobbying, the partnerships and so forth.
In terms of the view that people hold of animals, it's something that, we've also been thinking about this, and we've had some great training sessions with Animal Think Tank. You guys probably know them in the UK, and it's been really interesting. And we're taking what we've learnt and how we can kind of tell the story about, we're looking at pigs in particular, and how people, because, sometimes I think, because obviously people, tend to love dogs, a lot of people love dogs, and yet pigs are so similar, and they just don't see them in the same way whatsoever. And it's trying to reconnect people with other animals, and our use of language and how we show the investigation footage in a way that creates that biggest impact on somebody. And just changing the way they see other animals, fellow animals. It's something that we are learning a lot, and we're learning every day here at Animal Justice Project. And again, self-reflection. And I think you're absolutely right. Just finding the best ways. How do we reconnect humans with the fellow animals? Because then half the work is done, you would hope.
And also another challenge we need to overcome is, how do we get people from just being vegan but actually activists? Because 99% of vegans are not activists, and that's like a major problem that we need to address. One of the challenges I've had in the UK is getting animal rights activists to do like the email action campaigns, because I think there's like a belief like, oh, it's not going to achieve much. But it was one email that made Edinburgh, endorse plant-based treaty. So we just need to learn to actually believe that one person can make a difference.
Yeah, I think it's also important that, because that's something that we talk about quite a lot, in terms of we really need more activists out there, on the streets especially. But I think it's important to know that, activism just isn't just about getting out onto the streets and, joining a protest or an outreach event or a vigil. It is that lobbying online as well, sending off those emails, as we've already discussed. It can make a big impact. Sharing content on social media as well, signing different petitions. And if you're able to, donate into organizations as well that are actually doing this work all of the time. And there's so many different ways that people can be activists. Because people might not be able to join a protest because of the job that they do, for example, but, they can easily send a letter to their MP or sign a petition to the Prime Minister, or to a pig farm or something like that. So yeah, we really, really do need more activists out there, and hopefully people who watch this will be inspired to become activists as well, and know that there are different ways of doing it, and that we actually can make change.
Wanted to add to that activism is one of the best decisions I ever made in my life, and I'm sure all of you agree with that as well, because you hear a lot of people saying going vegan was the best decision I ever made. Well, being an activist is even better than that. Like, I think a lot of people are anxious, depressed, sad by the state of the world and how animals are treated, and the 92 billion land animals brutally confined, tortured, killed each year, and trillions of fish each year. So, and looking at the state of the climate crisis and all the other crises, war, and all the things that are happening in the world are very overwhelming and pressing. But the best antidote to that is taking action. And one of my sort of heroes is Leo Tolstoy. I follow him closely, and he had a midlife crisis where he was thinking about killing himself hundreds of times, and he wanted to understand why, and then he figured out that his thinking did not match his actions. So once he changed that, the last 30 years of his life, he became a conscientious objector, he became ethical vegetarian, he worked with the peasants, and on. That changed his life, so it became meaningful. So in terms of meaning in life, one of the best things you can do is become active and to sort of, walk the talk. There's nothing like it. You know, there's absolutely nothing like it. It's the best thing you can do. So I want to encourage everyone to become an activist. And as you said, there's so many different ways for people to lend their talents and their skills to it. One of the ways what we could do to help people become active is just being kind, and you having a community organizing approach, like the civil rights movement, like Gandhi, like Cesar Chavez. Just, you know, having ordinary people become organizers, become leaders, become and so Marshall McLuhan, he's a Canadian who looked at studied media, and he talked about media mind bombs, the visual images that are so riveting and eye-catching that they provoke action. And I think that's some of the work, you know, you do with the investigations, or we do with the vigils. Like there's nothing like, you know, going into a farm and doing an investigation. Just nothing like it. It's just so powerful. Vigils are something that's more accessible, you know, for grandmothers, for children. Anyone can do it. But it's nothing like it to see an animal face to face, a beautiful dog. You know, if it's a dog in a dog slaughter truck in China, or a pig or a cow, you know, in the UK, there's no difference. Like, it's just so incredible to see these individuals in such an unjust situation, and it could motivate. It provokes action. So there was a stockbroker who came to he just passed and saw that we were doing vigils. He lived near the slaughterhouse, and he was into football or soccer, you know, totally not an activist. And then he became an activist. Now he's our director of communications, like James O'Toole. And, you know, he's a different person, right? And he doesn't watch soccer anymore. Now he's just an activist. And, you know, this is his life. So yeah, I just think all of us can change. It gives, and you won't go back. Like, once you become truly vegan on an ethical basis, or you become an activist, you know, you just cannot not act. You know, it's just not possible. When there's an injustice, you're going to act.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's really inspiring, actually. I mean, you know, we're all activists here, but it's inspiring to just like hear that as well. I think it's important, again, to reiterate that, you know, no matter what talents we have or what we can do, we can all play our little part in it. Even from an organizational level, you know, whether we're doing those corporate pressure campaigns or lobbying or investigations, vigils or consumer diet change, you know, we've all got that role to play. And having such a broad tactic like that as well, we're going to reach as many people as we can. And as an individual, there's so much that we can do. Yeah, so I don't know whether if anyone has any other points they wanted to add in there, but I think that's a really like nice, positive point that we could end on here.
Yeah, I did want to add, like, I just wanted to go again back to Tolstoy and Brecht. They had a literary technique called estrangement or defamiliarization. It's estrangement. So basically it consists of describing something as if you were encountering it for the first time. So in everyday life, we take things for granted, like meat, dairy, and eggs, eating meat, dairy, and eggs, without thinking about the individual animals. So there's, you know, when we go to the supermarket, we see supermarkets of pain. We see the individuals when we see a slab of meat, right? But most people don't. And when you were not a vegan and an activist, you didn't either. Like, you went to, you know, the butcher shop and you didn't think about it. So how do you use this technique? So, like, the purpose of this technique is to create outrage at animal exploitation and suffering, and the destruction of the climate, the rainforest, biodiversity, you know, poverty, you know, starvation around the world, because of the role of animal farming. So how do you use this technique to encourage people or force people to pay attention? Because that's the thing. How do people are not thinking about it versus how do you get people to pay attention? And so in this technique, what you do is you rivet people around details. So if people could only see the pigs and the lives they live, the sight of these incredible animals would convince them that these pigs are persons, that they have rights. Then if they would see the same animals in animal farms and, confined and, the babies, piglets separated from the mom. It's just the details and how they're prevented from living their natural life and how they're then tortured and killed. People learned that this was all unnecessary and it's geared towards profit and the enrichment of a few, and that, we could transform the system so that farmers could have a good life without involving animal farming, and that people could eat healthier plant-based lives. That would help change people's minds, and then they would also act on what they learned. So what I'm saying, like in art, there are these techniques that are used for critical thinking. We do use the same type of techniques, but I think we can study them a little more. Like, when are they effective? You have to just sort of get people exposed to the details and rivet them, just like we are riveted when we go to a vigil or we do an investigation. We all know, I'm sure you all feel like, I wish everybody could see this, what I'm seeing now. You would not believe what I'm seeing. If you saw this, people would not, cooperate with evil. They would not participate in the system. Like, we always think that. It's just like, how do we get everyone to see what we see and experience what we see? Because it's transformative. So I think that's our project is, it's like, we want people not to take for granted what is meat, dairy, and eggs. It's animal flesh. It's stolen milk. It's, what is it really? So like that's our challenge. And artists have done that. And activists, are doing the same thing.
I think it'd be really good, Anita, and I don't know if you agree, Ed, but maybe as this is posted on social media, this video might be good. There might be some links that Anita, you could send over beforehand that we could include, which would be good for activists, because that's really important, isn't it? Getting people to actually see the animals, see what's happening, like actually see them, and act. And there might be some good tools for activists, for campaigners who are watching this video. Maybe there's some links to the information that you just put just there, that you just said just then. Any books or anything on critical thinking or this riveting, any links that you've got could be quite useful, I think, to activists.
Yes, absolutely.
Inspiration.
Yeah, I think having a list of resources for people is always helpful. I'm sure, we'll be able to provide some of our own as well. So yeah, I guess we can wrap up there. So a big thank you to all of you for joining us today. We really appreciate all of the effort and the fantastic work that you're doing at Animal Safe Movement and Plant-Based Treaty. I know I can speak for both myself and Claire and AJP as a whole, but we are very, very big fans of all the work that you're doing and the successes that you do get as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Anita and Andrew, and to Claire as well for this great discussion.
Thanks. We love the Animal Justice Project, and we've loved working with you over the years. It's a privilege. So yeah, thank you so much.
Very inspirational. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.